sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
Do you want these trials to happen before the 2024 election?
So there we are. Donald Trump is heading back to Bedminster on his plane, and he said that it was a sad day for America. He then said it was sad to see the filth and decay, as he put it, in Washington. Has to be said, not a city he's ever been that fond of. He famously called it the swamp and said he would drain it. He then went on to say that it is nothing short of political persecution of the person leading the Republican primary. So a very short speech from Donald Trump, very brief and no questions, and he will now be heading off back to, we think, Bedminster in New Jersey, his golf club there, with his legal team, who will be all on that plane with him. And his hearing is done. He has pleaded not guilty. James Matthews is still at the courthouse. And James, very brief words from Donald Trump, but typically defiant.
Yeah, typically defiant. And, you know, we've heard all that before. The central theme is that this is a political witch hunt, a weaponization of the justice system. That feeds into his fundraising. It feeds into his presidential campaign. What will his defense be? Well, I think we got a sense of that actually before the hearing, Mark. We heard from Alina Habba, Donald Trump's lawyer, and amidst all the talk of individuals who were in the room, Donald Trump's inner circle, telling him, warning him that he had lost the election, that claims of a rigged election were false. She made the point that this was a man receiving advice from many people, not necessarily all of whom were giving him the same advice. So that seems to chime with what we've heard from his legal team, that one strand of his defense will be that he was acting on the advice of his lawyers. Therefore, he was an innocent in all of this. I mean, that will be played out in due course. A trial date due to be fixed on the 28th of August at the next hearing. It is being billed here, quite rightly, I think, as the most significant, the biggest criminal trial in American history. The prosecution of a former president for nothing less than crimes against democracy. It's no ordinary case. It will have no ordinary consequences.
Yeah, and as you say, James, I mean, the argument now is going on about when this trial should take place. Trump's lawyer, I see, said in this hearing that the time frame of the government is absurd.
Yeah, the government wants to get it on quickly. A speedy trial, as I say, that places a 70-day limit, so they want to bring this to court in short order. Donald Trump's team say that's just not realistic, given the amount of discovery. Actually, what they said was they want to take a couple of days for discovery to get a handle on the amount of material and evidence that they have to go through so that they can build an appropriate defense for Donald Trump. And it's important that this is seen to be fair at this stage for all concerned, certainly for the legal process, because if there is seen to be a misstep by the presiding judge, then there is, of course, the possibility that that could lead to an appeal following any conviction. But the clock is ticking. Politically, the clock is very much ticking, and the deadline is tight. There's a presidential election in November 2024. Donald Trump is facing 3 criminal trials, which will punctuate his presidential campaign. The question is, will we be looking at Donald Trump, the convict, by the time we get to the next election? He will hope, one thinks, one imagines, I think it's fair to say that as far as possible he can push each of those criminal trials beyond the election, and should he win in November 2024, then he finds himself, or will do, in a position to influence the charges against him, to sack the prosecutors who have been chasing him, and of course to line up a presidential pardon, not for the first time, but this time for himself.